What up? It's your boy, the Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again, and this is 911 Season 4, Episode 10 review, and I feel like the general theme of this episode was parenthood and parents, but like then it just got like all kinds of like emotional, man. Let's talk about it. Like I said, this episode was strictly about parents and parenthood and that whole aspect. But then it laid the groundwork for that. But then it just piled on so much more stuff on top of that, because after that it got like all kinds of emotional and serious and super intense, man. Like the cases this episode, the very first two cases were, like they were the joke cases and the comedic cases, but like they had a lesson to be learned in there as well. Like with the mom that's like an influencer or whatever, and she wanted to throw this party for her kid, but he's 12, so he's not gonna like all the kiddie stuff. And basically she didn't even throw the party for her kid. She done it, because all these people sent the free stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you're an influencer and they're gonna send you all this free stuff and everything, but her kid's a 12-year-old, so he's not gonna be excited by that type of stuff anymore. He wanted to laser tag and shoot guns and stuff, and that's not what she's about, because she has her whole blog going on, about being, the go-to mom, the good mom and stuff. So she couldn't really just put that out there and then advertise that, especially after all these companies and stuff sent her this free products. But then we see that she's trying to play pin to tail on the donkey, and next thing you know, man, some springs off this raggedy trampoline just bust through and poke her through her hand and like closely to her spine. So you're telling me these people, they wanted her to boast about their products, I'm assuming, and they sent her a rusty, raggedy trampoline, and next thing you know, the springs pop off and it shoots. Come on, man. Oh my gosh. But it was a comedy in there, but there was a lesson to be learned as well, because we see that the kid is kind of acting out a little bit, but after that happened to his mom, now he changed his tune. He's like, well, he's worried about his mom, and that's the way that it should be. And don't get me wrong, he should be acting down anyway, but it's a given because he's a 12-year-old kid, so that there's that element. The second case. Now the second case, the second case was hilarious, because we see that we see this dude climbing up side of the trellis, trying to get into the house, and I thought he was a legit burglar because he had on all of the black and everything. The next thing you know, he falls, breaks both of his legs, and we see that he's calling from the house. He called 911, and we find out that the people inside the house are calling 911 as well. And we see that May and Josh both see that like their calls are connected. And next thing you know, everybody arrives on scene. We find out that that's his house. Like he lives there. That's his parents' house. And like they called the police as well. It was weird. But we see that the father wants to teach the son a lesson about growing up, and the mother is still babying him. But we also see that the father is the one that like shaved the screws down so his son would fall, because he's broken in a couple times before, and only to sleep there. It's not like he's stealing anything. He just wanted a place to stay because he didn't have any other place to go. And sure, you can't coddle your kids constantly, because then they'll never grow up. But you don't want to cause them physical harm. I mean, dude, your son broke both of his legs because of something stupid that you done. And in the end, he was arrested because he intended to cause bodily harm to someone, whether it was his son or not. And if you ask me, it makes it 10 times worse, because it was your son. And it's not like he was a legit criminal. He was trying to find somewhere to stay for the night and not sleep in his car. And that's what you do? And they had a whole falling out, but it was a lesson to be learned in that as well. Now, those two cases were like the whole jokes of this episode, and everything after that got like all kinds of serious, man. We see that Albert's finally recovering, but not at an accelerated rate, man, because he's having balancing problems. He's forgetful. He's forgetting a lot of things, and he doesn't want to be a burden on Chimney and Maddie, but they don't see him as a burden, but we see that Albert sees himself as a burden on Chimney and Maddie this episode, and Ji-yoon. And at the end of the episode, we see that Anne comes over. You guys remember Anne? She helped raise Chimney and everything with her son. And she comes over to help Chimney and take Albert to his doctor's appointment and everything, because Chimney seems to be overwhelmed and Maddie seems to be overwhelmed. And Chim says something that, that's regards like, well, we hate to have strangers around the baby. And I know he wasn't intending it for it to come off that way for Anne, but like that's how it came off. And she was like, well, I'll just take Albert to his doctor's appointment. And later in the episode, we see that him and Maddie both realize that they can't do this themselves. That it's struggling. It's a lot on them with both of their jobs. And we see that everybody from the call center is there for Maddie when she needs and wants help, because it takes a village. So everybody's putting in to help them in their situation, because like they need help. So Anne decides to take Albert at the end of the episode. That we notice, she decides to take Albert and let Albert move in with her and her husband to give Chimney and Maddie a break while they can just solely focus on Ji-yoon. And it kind of gives them that whole thing, because both of them retired, so there gives them someone to kind of intermediate between husband and wife. And we also see that Chimney tells her that she's the grandmother of Ji-yoon. And that was such a nice moment, because, you know, after getting the whole backstory about Chimney becoming a firefighter and what happened between him and Anne's son, like there was a lot of stuff going on with that. But to see that, she, you know, we know that she raised him and everything and took him in, and for him to let her know that, hey, you are Ji-yoon's grandparents. You guys are. That's just that. It is what it is, man. And that was a nice scene. And that was a nice moment, because she felt something, Chimney felt something, and we felt something as the viewers. And I think that was a nice resolution for that, because at the end of the episode, we see them falling asleep watching Ji-yoon. Like they were supposed to have like a date night, but they ended up just watching the baby and falling asleep. Now let's talk about something that was a little bit more heartbreaking this episode, which is Hen and her family dealing with the loss of Nia. Like, she didn't die or anything, you guys know that, but she went back to her mother, and Hen didn't want to go through this again. Hen was like, no, I'm setting the groundwork. We're not doing this anymore. I don't want to go through this hurt, because we see that it also affected Denny a little bit this episode as well. But by the end of the episode, we see that Ellen hired a private investigator to check up on Nia's mother, and she was just someone that just had bad things happen to people, man. And she, you know, during the pandemic, she didn't really have a stable foundation. She lost a job and all this other type of stuff. So she was living in her car with her daughter, and someone saw them, and then they called child services, and it just was a bad thing. But during that time that she stayed with him, she got a chance to live a nice, happy life. But her mother got a chance to find stable work, and after it was all over, she got to go back to her mother. And they were skeptical at first, but now that they realize what she does and what she went through, and they see that she's in good hands and in good care, they're okay with it, and they're even willing to try again. And we see at the end of the episode, they take in two other little kids that where their aunt is on the way down to come get them, so they'll just only be there for a couple days. But we see that they're trying again, and we see that Denny's helping out in the effort. So I feel like it was a hard situation, because when she was telling them bye and giving them hugs and stuff, that was just such a sweet and tender moment. It made you feel something, and I love that. And at the end of the episode, we get that resolution for everybody in that whole situation. Now, the third case this episode, where we see that this lady ends up having cancer in the brain, and it just taking over, and she called 911 to tell them that she overdosed, but she only wanted 911 there for her daughter. And the sad thing about it is, man, it was so sad to see that scene, because she had a do not resuscitate, that they couldn't perform any kind of life-saving duties. She didn't want that. She just wanted to die, because she didn't want to be a burden on her daughter anymore. And like I said, like this entire episode was like the whole parenthood throughout the entire episode, whether it was from our main characters or from the cases this episode, it all tied into that aspect. And she just didn't want to be a burden on her daughter anymore, so she wanted 911 there to be there with her daughter while she passed on, so she wouldn't be there alone. And we get to see like a mini flashback of how their life went from when she was a kid to a teenager to a young adult and everything, and then her coming back to finally take care of her mom. And then next thing you know, her mom passed, and Hen ended up being there with her in Chimney. And then, you know, it was what it was, man. And we get to see that. It was a touching moment, but it was heartbreaking at the same time, man. Oh my gosh, that was a scene, man. Then we're also dealing with May this episode. Now, all of that other stuff, like I said, it was very hard. It was gut wrenching. It was heartwarming. It was heartfelt. There was a lot of stuff going on with all of the emotions going on with all the other stuff. But this stuff with May, man, was on a different level entirely. Now, we all knew that May tried to commit suicide and take her own life, but I never knew that the girl that tried to reach out to her and talk to her was the same one that agitated the whole situation and made May want to do that. Now, I didn't know. And for that to be the case, and for May to go out her way to, at least hear her out and talk to her and have a conversation, I'm with Athena 100%. You don't owe her nothing. Don't talk to her. And I get it. May is an adult, so like it's her decision whether she decides to do it or not. But I'm with Athena, man, and I feel like May kind of realized that after talking to her father, because the whole time she was talking to Athena, like she was like, "Oh, well, it's my situation. It's my problem." Da 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 da. And I get that. Sure, it is. But I'm with Athena. You made it my problem when you told me that this chick is the one that agitated you to when all of that happened, and she was the one, the cause of it. It became my problem then, especially when she found out that it was when Athena found out that it was her pills that she took. Now, after her conversation with Bobby, she decided to see it halfway, half full, half empty kind of glass situation, but leaning towards the more full situation because she felt like May don't owe this chick anything, and I feel like she doesn't. But after talking to her father, May came to a realization, and Michael just laid it out for her, man. It's like she was the one that found you. It was her pills, and she felt like it was partially her fault because of the whole divorce situation. And this was hard on Athena, man. You could see her really just breaking down, and May didn't really get the gist of it until she went and listened to that 911 call. And son, when I listened to that 911 call with May, man, that 911 call, man, was heartbreaking, man. Just listening to Athena go through that stuff, because we see Athena as this strong figure, this strong black woman, this independent woman. Sure, she has as Bobby and Michael and her kids and everyone else, and she don't admit like to need help, but like she does take it occasionally. But we see her in a super vulnerable situation, and it was hard, man. And just listening to her voice break, trying to be there for May and hoping that she can resuscitate or do something, because she didn't find a pulse until she did, like a faint heartbeat, trying to breathe life into her body. That was hard for Athena, and May realized that after listening to it, and all she could do once she got home was just hug her mother and apologize, because after listening to that 911 call, she realized that, you know what, Mom was right. This was all kinds of, I get it now. She didn't at first, but now she gets it. And I just gotta say, man, this episode hit different, man. Like there was last week, it was okay, but this week 911 came in strong, man. And I gotta say, I love it. This is your boy, Incredible, man. Don't forget, smash the like button till you can't smash any more. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them, and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that 911 and 911 Lone Star brings that heat every week. Now I'm finna go check out 911 Lone Star. Peace out, man.